Okay, let's start with a pop quiz. Picture the whole world right now. If I asked you, what is the single greatest crisis facing the global church today? What would you say?
That's a huge question, and I think for most of us, our minds go straight to the external stuff.
Right. I'm thinking persecution. I'm thinking, government's cracking down, borders closing up, maybe funding is drying up. You just look at the news and it feels like the walls are closing in.
And that's the standard narrative, isn't it? The crisis of access. But today, we're deep diving into a source, a text called the Missionary Rising, that says we're reading the map completely upside down.
This is where it threw me for a loop. The source argues the crisis isn't out there. It's not about visas or geopolitics.
No?
It argues the crisis is here. It's a crisis of readiness.
It's a really provocative claim.
Yeah.
Because on paper, we should be incredibly ready.
That's what I wanted to push back on. I mean, think about it. We have the internet.
Yeah.
I can FaceTime someone in a village in the Amazon.
Ugh.
I can get on a plane and be almost anywhere in 24 hours. We have more money, more text than any other generation in history. How can we possibly be unready?
And that is the exact paradox this text gets into. It calls it the quiet tension. Yes, we have the access, we've got the hardware, but there's this massive widening gap between what it calls calling and commissioning.
So we have the impulse to go, but not really the ability to stay.
Precisely. The text points to what it calls the hidden problem. The modern church, it says, has become exceptionally good at recruiting passion. We are great at the hype video.
Oh, yeah.
We love that emotional yes at the end of a big conference.
We love the here I am, send me t-shirt.
We do. But the source argues that we're sending people out armed with sincerity, but without the, quote, systems that sustain obedience.
Sincerity without systems. That phrase really stuck with me because, to play devil's advocate, shouldn't sincerity be enough? If my heart is in the right place, doesn't that count for everything?
In a movie, maybe, but in the field, no. The text is brutal on this point. It says sincerity burns out. When you recruit all that passion without deep formation, you don't get boldness, you get burnout.
It's like sending a soldier into combat with just patriotism, but no boot camp.
That is the perfect analogy. And the tragedy, according to the source, is we have these waves of enthusiastic people who launch out, and then they just quietly fade away. They weren't built for the long haul.
So the Missionary Rising isn't about a new app or a new strategy.
Not at all. It's about closing that gap. It's framed as a reawakening. And the core idea is that missionaries are formed, not born. It's not a lightning bolt, It's a journey.
A discernible journey. The text actually maps it out from the very first little spark of interest all the way to leaving a legacy.
It does.
So let's walk through that path, because even if you listening aren't planning to move to the jungle next week, the psychology here is fascinating. Step one is simply awareness.
Right. And we shouldn't just gloss over this. Most people think awareness is, just looking at a globe. Oh, look, there's a country called Laos.
Mm-hmm.
But the source digs deeper. It talks about a condition it calls spiritual provincialism.
I felt a little personally attacked by that term.
I think we all should.
It's this idea that our world is just really, really small, right?
It's the subconscious belief that God is mostly concerned with my zip code, my traffic jam, my promotion, my personal comfort. It's shrinking the entire cosmos down to your immediate line of sight.
Main character energy.
Exactly. So true awareness isn't just seeing a map, it's a disruption of that. The author calls it a holy unease.
I like that. Holy unease. It's not just guilt.
No, it's not guilt. It's a nagging dissatisfaction. It's that moment when the status quo, the new car, the nice vacation, it all starts to taste a little like cardboard. You start to see the world not as a collection of scary headlines, but as fields ripe for harvest.
That's the sanctified side it talks about.
Yes. You stop seeing those people over there as statistics or threats, and you start seeing souls. That's the real pivot.
Okay, so you have this holy unease. You see the need. You've broken out of your provincial bubble. The modern instinct is to act. Now, let's go. Book the flight. Start the Instagram page.
The bias toward action, we love it.
But the text just slams the brakes on right here. It says stop. Step 2 is training, and it calls this phase the hidden years.
And this is where we lose people. We live in a culture of shortcuts, of life hacks. We want 30 days to fluency. But the maxim in the source is just unyielding. God never sends what he has not first shaped.
God never sends what he's not first shaped. That just completely counters the myth of immediacy we're all so used to.
It destroys it, and the text brings the receipts from the Bible to prove it. I mean, look at Moses. We think of him parting the Red Sea, the big hero moment, but before that,
He was a prince in Egypt.
he was, and he tried to take matters into his own hands, failed spectacularly, and then spent 40 years herding sheep in the desert.
40 years. That's an entire career. That is a lifetime for some people.
Just watching sheep eat grass. Think about the psychological weight of that. He went from the palace, from being a somebody, to absolute obscurity. But that's where the text argues the arrogance was ground out of him. That's where he learned how to actually lead.
It's funny because we see a gap like that as wasted time. Like, oh, I'm stuck here waiting. But the source is saying the waiting is the work.
That's it. Look at the Apostle Paul. He has his Damascus Road experience, but he doesn't start writing letters the next day. He spends years in Arabia, in the desert, being reformed. Even Jesus' disciples had a 3-year apprenticeship.
So the takeaway is that character has to come before competence.
Always. Formation determines your longevity. If you skip the hidden years because you're in a rush to be significant, you'll absolutely collapse when the pressure hits.
Okay, so you survived the boredom of the hidden years. You've been shaped. Now you're facing the actual decision. Step 3, courage.
Now, how do you usually define courage?
Not being scared, being a warrior, fearless.
Right. But the text flips that on its head. It says if you aren't scared, you don't even need courage. Biblical courage is obedience in the presence of fear.
It talks about crossing the threshold,
Yeah.
the moment you move from just theory to reality.
And to explain this, it does a really cool breakdown of Isaiah chapter 6. We all love to quote the end of that chapter, "Here I am, send me." It's so heroic.
It's the slogan.
It's the slogan, but we skip the sequence that gets him there. Isaiah doesn't start by looking at the world and saying, wow, they need help. He starts with an encounter. He sees God. He sees the holiness.
And his reaction isn't cool, it's terror.
Total devastation. He says, woe is me, I am undone.
He sees his own mess first,
Yeah.
and that leads to conviction and cleansing the coal touching his lips.
So he has to deal with his own brokenness before anything else.
He has to. You can't heal the world if you're ignoring your own sickness.
Yeah.
It's only after that internal change that he hears the question, whom shall I send, and can finally respond. That connects right back to the training, doesn't it? You have to be shaped before you're sent.
Yeah.
But even with all that shaping, the source lists some very specific fears that stop people.
Oh, absolutely. There's financial fear. How will I provide? Will my kids be okay? There's cultural fear. I don't know the language. I'm going to look like an idiot.
And the big one, reputational fear.
That's the killer. What will people think of me? Why are you throwing your career away to go do this? Crossing that threshold means you have to walk straight through those fears, not pretend they don't exist.
So let's say our missionary crosses the threshold. They get on the plane. They land. Now they're in the field. This brings us to step 4, sustainability.
This is what it calls the long obedience. And the text uses a phrase that I think applies to any long-term commitment: when the romance fades.
Because it always does.
Always.
Yeah.
The travel montage ends, the exotic smells just become annoying smells, the heat is oppressive, you're lonely. And this is where the text argues that passion might ignite the mission, but only that deep formation sustains it.
This is where the source introduced a theological shift I found really challenging. It says you have to move from valuing outcomes to valuing covenant.
This is so crucial. We are wired for outcomes. We want to see the ROI. How many converts this month? How many churches did we plant?
If you're a sales guy, you want to see the numbers go up.
Exactly. But a lot of mission work is agonizingly slow. If your identity is rooted in getting immediate, visible results, you will quit. You have to root your identity in covenant.
How would you explain that distinction to someone? Covenant versus outcomes.
Well, think of a marriage. You don't stay married only on the days your spouse is amazing and life is easy. You stay because of the vow you promised. Covenant faithfulness means I am here because God called me to be here, regardless of what the stat sheet says this month.
That is a much, much harder way to live.
It is.
Right.
And that's why the text hammers home that you can't do it alone. It talks about the sending church. It's not just about writing a check. It's about spiritual partnership. Accountability. If you're out there on an island by yourself, you will sink.
This leads perfectly into step 5. Action, or what the source calls incarnational faith.
Faith that moves its feet.
I love that image. But the source throws another curveball here. It says that mission starts now, Not when you get on a plane.
It totally attacks the magic airplane theory, this idea that stepping onto a Boeing 747 miraculously turns you into some super spiritual evangelist.
Right.
If you aren't living on mission in your current zip code, talking to your neighbors, serving your city, you won't magically start doing it just because you crossed an ocean.
It's the ordinary start.
Exactly. And when you do go, the action has to be incarnational. It has to become like the people you're trying to serve.
The text had some great examples of this. Hudson Taylor is the classic one.
Hudson Taylor is a phenomenal case study. Back in the 19th century, most Western missionaries in China lived in these little European compounds. They wore British suits, ate British food, and sort of preached from a distance.
They kept themselves separate?
Totally. But Taylor said no. He shaved the front of his head, grew the long ponytail, dyed it black, and wore Chinese robes.
Which at the time must have been just scandalous to the other Europeans.
Oh, they mocked him. They thought he was degrading himself. But the Chinese people listened because he humbled himself to become one of them. That's incarnational faith.
And then there's Amy Carmichael.
The hidden life.
Yeah.
She spent 55 years in India without a single furlough. She focused on rescuing children from temple prostitution. It was not glamorous. It was hidden, gritty work. She wasn't sending back glorious reports to build a personal brand. She was just being obedient in the dark.
So we have awareness, training, courage, sustainability, and action. But it doesn't stop there. We have to think bigger. Step 6 is scaling.
This is where we move from the individual hero to the actual movement. The text says, systems serve the spirit.
Now, systems can sound a little dry, a bit corporate. I feel like a lot of people hear that and think, wait, aren't we supposed to be led by the Spirit? Why do we need org charts?
It's a common pushback. But think of it this way. A healthy mission isn't about one single hero. It has to be about multiplication. If everything depends on one charismatic leader, what happens when they're gone?
The whole mission just dies with them.
Exactly. It becomes a personality cult, not a movement. The source points to the Moravians in the 1700s. They were a small group, refugees really, but they had incredible systems. They set up a 24-hour prayer watch.
So lasted for 100 years, right?
Over 100 years, nonstop prayer. That's a system. And because they had that organized structure, they were able to send out more missionaries than all the other Protestant churches combined for 2 centuries.
So the system isn't the enemy of the Spirit.
Yeah.
It's the trellis that lets the vine grow.
Beautifully put. It's the difference between being a superstar and being a builder.
Which leads right to the final step, legacy.
Step 7. And this really reframes our whole definition of success.
How so?
Well, in our culture, success is finishing the job, spiking the football, getting the credit. But the concept of legacy embraces the unfinished work. It means acknowledging that, like Abraham, you might not see the full promise fulfilled in your lifetime.
Abraham was promised he'd be the father of nations, but he basically lived in a tent and only saw one son from that promise.
Exactly. He never owned the land except for a grave. But he was faithful. Legacy means you're okay with being the foundation layer. You're okay with planting trees whose shade you will never sit under.
That is a tough pill to swallow for the Instagram generation. We want to see the harvest. We want to post the harvest.
We do, but the text challenges us. Are you willing to sow so that a generation you will never meet can reap? That's the definition of a missionary rising. It's a faithfulness that outlives you.
So let's zoom out. We've walked through this whole journey, from that first holy unease all the way to leaving a multi-generational legacy. When you look at this whole framework, what is the core message for someone listening right now?
I think it circles right back to that first question we asked, the crisis of readiness.
The gap between calling and commissioning.
Yeah. The Missionary Rising isn't some program you sign up for. It's a shift in posture. It's moving from being a volunteer, where mission is optional, something I do in my spare time, to being surrendered, where mission is essential to who I am.
It goes back to that question from Isaiah, whom shall I send?
That's the enduring mandate.
Yeah.
The question hasn't changed in thousands of years. God is still asking. The world is waiting for an embodied answer to that question.
And the answer isn't just here I am, it's here I am, shape me.
Shape me, prepare me, sustain me, yes.
Exactly.
It's fascinating because it takes all the pressure off of being the hero and puts the emphasis on just being prepared.
That's it. You don't have to save the world. You just have to be ready to be used by the one who does.
I keep thinking about that burnout trap we started with. If we actually followed this path, if we embraced the training, the hidden years, the systems, how different would the global church look? It would be robust. It wouldn't be so fragile. We wouldn't have so many, casualties of war, so to speak. We'd have people who are steady. And in a chaotic world, steadiness is a powerful witness.
Absolutely. Steadiness is magnetic.
And notice, the text says the Missionary Rising is already underway. This isn't theoretical. It's happening. The Spirit is moving. The only variable left is us.
Are we going to join in?
Are we going to do the hard work to be ready?
It reminds me of that old quote about planting trees, the ones whose shade you know you'll never sit in. That's the legacy piece.
That is the heart of it. Are you willing to do the hard, unglamorous work of preparation and foundation laying so that a generation you might never meet can walk in the truth? That's the real question.
It really challenges the modern, me-centered gospel, doesn't it? It's not about my self-actualization.
Yeah.
It's about my surrender.
Completely. And that's where the joy is found. Ironically, by giving up the need to be the hero, you find a purpose that actually sustains you for the long haul.
So for the listener who's feeling that holy unease right now, maybe they're sitting in traffic and they're realizing, I'm comfortable, but I'm not ready. What's the first step?
Don't jump to the plane ticket. Jump to the preparation. Ask God to shape you. Look for the training. Find the hidden years right where you are now. Be faithful in the small things today. That's how the rising begins.
It starts in the quiet.
It always starts in the quiet.
Well, this has been a lot to process, but in the best way. It feels like we've taken a massive topic and found the heartbeat of it.
It's a call to maturity, really, a call to grow up into the mission.
I love that. A call to maturity.
And remember, the question isn't just who will go, it's who will rise prepared.
That is the thought we are going to leave you with today. The world is waiting for an answer to God's question, will you rise prepared? Thanks for diving deep with us.
It's been a pleasure.